Greetings, greetings, greetings. This is Brother Uriah from the Hebrew Israelite Home Bible Study Group here in Pensacola, Florida. Today's date is the 29th day of the month of Abib, the first month of the biblical year. But according to the Roman Catholic Pagan calendar, today is April 21st of the year 2020 AD, as they call it. Today we're going to be studying the 7 biblical feast days of Father Yah, according to the biblical Lunar-Solar Calendar. We're going to show that all of his feast days properly fit and align according to this biblical Lunar-Solar Calendar. Let us begin. Today's opening scripture is going to be taken from Leviticus 23 of the KJV, verses 1 and 2. And Yahuwah spoke unto Moses, saying, Speak unto the children of Israel, and say unto them, concerning the feast of Yahuwah, which ye shall proclaim to be holy convocations, even these are my feasts. So we're going to be showing that these 7 feasts proclaimed by Father Yah himself can only be established correctly by the Lunar-Solar Biblical Calendar. We just call it lunar-solar. The Bible doesn't call it lunar-solar, but it's called lunar-solar because it's based upon those 2 great lights. Recall from a previous lesson that the Roman Catholic Gregorian calendar is based only upon one of those great lights. And recall that scripture that says that a matter cannot be established by one witness, that it must be established by at least 2, or preferably even 3. So when we look at Genesis chapter 1, I think it's verse 14, where it says that those days were established by 2 great lights. Those are your 2 witnesses to what we are speaking of. But notice that there was actually a 3rd witness, the stars. It says the 2 great lights, one to rule the day and one to rule the night. And there were the stars also. We're going to include in another lesson these stars, this 3rd witness. 3 witnesses, all biblical. 3 witnesses, not 1, which is what this Roman Catholic pagan calendar is based upon. 1. That by itself tells you that something is very, very wrong. Father Yah's instructions are that there should be at least 2 witnesses. But he gave us 3. And so far we've only been dealing with the 2. And the differences are phenomenal just with those 2 witnesses. So let us begin this study on the feast days established by Father Yah. Let us begin. Now let's go to Leviticus 23, where Father Yah establishes his feast days. Leviticus 23, 1 through 8 of the KJV, with the names corrected. verses 1 through 8. And Yahuwah spake unto Moses, saying, Speak unto the children of Israel, and say unto them, concerning the feast of Yahuwah, which ye shall proclaim to be holy convocations, even these are my feasts. 6 days shall work be done, but the 7th day is the Sabbath of rest, a holy convocation. Ye shall do no work therein. It is the Sabbath of Yahuwah in all your dwellings. Notice that, in all your dwellings. So it doesn't matter if you're in your own homeland or if you are still in the land of your captivity. You are still to hold the Sabbath in all your dwellings. Verse 4. These are the feasts of Yahuwah, even holy convocations, which ye shall proclaim in their seasons. In the 14th day of the first month at even or evening is Yahuwah's Passover. And on the 15th day of the same month is the feast of unleavened bread unto Yahuwah. 7 days you must eat unleavened bread. In the first day ye shall have a holy convocation. Ye shall do no servile work therein. But ye shall offer an offering made by fire unto Yahuwah. 7 days. In the 7th day is a holy convocation. Ye shall do no servile work therein. So here we have established the first 2 feast days of Father Yah, being Passover and the 7th-day Feast of Unleavened Bread. Well, when does the Passover begin? It begins on the 14th day of the first month. We are currently, as in the date of this recording, in the month of Abib. It is currently the 29th day of the month of Abib, according to the biblical calendar. 15 days ago was the Passover, the 14th day of Abib. And therefore on the 15th of this month was the beginning of the Feast of Unleavened Bread. Remember that the Feast of Unleavened Bread is 7 days long. Leviticus 23, verses 9 through 11. And Yahuwah spoke unto Moses, saying, Speak unto the children of Israel, and say unto them, When ye be come into the land which I give unto you, and shall reap the harvest thereof, then ye shall bring a sheaf of the first fruits of your harvest unto the priest, and he shall wave the sheaf before Yahuwah to be accepted for you on the morrow or the morning after the Sabbath. The priest shall wave it. Now remember, this is still in the first month, Abib, Exodus 13 and 4. Now, if on the 14th was the Passover, the 15th would follow it, just by reason. So it says that on the day after the 15th was the Feast of First Fruits. But notice that in verse 11 it says, on the morrow or the morning after the Sabbath, the priest shall wave it. So if the priest waved the offering on the 16th, then that was the morning after the Sabbath. Well, if that day was the 16th, then obviously the day prior to that, which was the 15th, would have been a Sabbath. So if the 15th is a Sabbath, then 7 days prior to the 15th would have been a Sabbath, the 8th. If the 15th is a Sabbath, then 7 days after the 15th would be a Sabbath, the 22nd. And if the 22nd is a Sabbath, then 7 days after that would be another Sabbath, the 29th. Again, confirming that the Sabbaths fall on the 8th, the 15th, the 22nd, and the 29th days of the month. Right before you, scripturally, the Sabbath is the 7th day of the week, not the first day. As we have seen in previous lessons, that the first day, called Sunday, is about worship of the sun, Solus Invicti. But we see through scriptures is showing you and I the correct Sabbath days, and they have to be according to the scriptures. The scriptures is clearly indicating here to you that the 15th day was a Sabbath, which therefore means that the 8th, the 22nd, and the 29th must also have been Sabbath days. Leviticus 23:12 through 16. And ye shall offer that day when you wave the sheaf and he lamb without blemish of the first year for a burnt offering unto Yahuwah. And the meat offering thereof shall be 2/10 deals of fine flour mingled with oil, an offering made by fire unto Yahuwah, for a sweet savor. And the drink offering thereof shall be wine, the 4th part of a hin. And ye shall eat neither bread, nor parched corn, nor green ears, until the selfsame day that ye have brought an offering unto your Elohim. It shall be a statute forever throughout your generations in all your dwellings. And ye shall count unto you from the morrow after the Sabbath, from the day that ye brought the sheaf of the wave offering, 7 Sabbaths shall be complete, even unto the morrow after the 7th Sabbath shall ye number 50 days, and ye shall offer a meat offering unto Yahuwah. Now let's break this down. We've got to break this down and so that we can see very clearly what is going on here. Now let's go back and review what was said in verses 15 and 16. We've got to take a look at this very, very closely, or you're going to miss something very important. Verses 15 and 16. And ye shall count unto you from the morrow, or the morning after the Sabbath, from the day that ye brought the sheaf of the wave offering, 7 Sabbaths shall be completed. Even unto the morrow after the 7th Sabbath shall ye number 50 days, and ye shall offer a new meat offering unto Yahuwah. Now, look at this closely at verse 15. And ye shall count. This is the first and only time where we are given instructions to count in order to determine one of Father Yah's holy feast days. You have to count. And ye shall count unto you from the morrow, or the morning after the Sabbath. Now, when was that Sabbath? When was that Sabbath? Didn't we already establish that that Sabbath that was referred to here was the 15th day of the first month? So the morning after the Sabbath would be the 16th day of that first month of Abib. And what are we told to do? We are told to count 7 Sabbaths. So let's do that. Let's count 7 Sabbaths from the 16th, which, as you should remember, is the day of first fruits. So we count 7 Sabbaths. The 22nd would be the first Sabbath. The 29th of the first month would be the second Sabbath. The 8th of the second month would be the third Sabbath. The 15th would be the fourth. The 22nd would be the fifth. The 29th day of the second month would be the sixth Sabbath. And the 8th day of the third month would be the seventh Sabbath. So here we establish that the 8th day of the third month is the seventh Sabbath. Okay, now, what else did it tell us to do from there? After we've counted seven Sabbaths. It says in verse 16, even unto the morrow after the seventh Sabbath. So we would go to after the seventh Sabbath, which would take us to the ninth Sabbath. And then it tells us to do what? Shall ye count 50 days. So from that point, you count 50 days. And when we count 50 days from the ninth, that's going to take us to either the 28th day of the fourth month or the 29th day of the fourth month. Why the 28th or the 29th? Because remember that in the biblical calendar, there can be either 29 days or 30 days. So that if there were 30 days in the third month, then that 50th day would fall on the 28th. If there was only 29 days in that third month, then that 50th day would fall on the 29th. So therefore, the day that the Hebrew Israelites knew as Chag Shabuah, in English, the Feast of Weeks, and to the Greeks called Pentecost, would have fallen on either of those 2 days, the 28th or the 29th of the fourth month. Now we must see and understand that when we say and use the word Pentecost, the word Pentecost means 50. But 50 days from where? 50 days counting from Easter. Where have we seen Easter on this calendar? You don't see Easter on any calendar until you get into the corruption of these Gentiles. Easter. There's no such thing as Easter on the Hebrew Israelite calendar system. Not at all. So this is corruption. 50 days from Easter. That's when they say the day of Pentecost was. The day when the Holy Spirit came down, the Ruach HaKodesh came down upon the apostles and those who were present at that time. But that is totally incorrect, because there was no Easter. The scripture doesn't say a word about some day called Easter, except in the verse where they changed it in Acts 12, verse 4, where they changed the word Pasach, with meaning the Passover, unto they changed it into Easter. Other than that, you don't find the word Easter anywhere else in the Bible. Now, if the feast Easter was something that was being done throughout the Hebrew scriptures, wouldn't you have found it somewhere else? Wouldn't you have found it in the so-called Old Testament? You don't see the word Easter found anywhere, except at that point in the book of Acts, chapter 12, verse 4. That's when these heathens changed it from Passover to Easter. See, and that's how that corruption got into the scriptures. That's where Satan is again trying to steal Father Yah's worship and establish his own holy days. And we have to understand this very clearly, because if you're not using Father Yah's calendar, and you're going by these pagan Gentiles' calendar, that Roman Catholic Gregorian corrupt satanic calendar, then you might be delving into all kinds of things that you had no intentions of. So let's go back and see this once more time, one more again. As they say, one more again. The day after the Sabbath will be the 16th. Counting 7 Sabbaths from there, that would have taken you to the 3rd month, the 8th day, which would have been the first Sabbath of that month. Then it says the day after that Sabbath, which would have taken you to the 9th. So it's from there that you do what? Verse 16. There you shall count, you shall number 50 days. So from that point, you number 50 days, which is going to take you to either the 28th or the 29th of the 4th month, depending on how many days are in the 3rd month, which is either 29 or 30. Now, there are those who teach that the Feast of Weeks begins on that 9th day of the 3rd month. Why do they say this? Well, because when you count 7 weeks, 7 times 7 is 49, plus the next day, remember it says that the day after that Sabbath, 49 plus 1, that would be 50. But this is incorrect. And I'm going to show you why this is incorrect. That the 9th day of the 4th month is not. The reason being is because Moses and the Hebrew Israelites had not even arrived at Mount Sinai at that time. Now, how do we know that they had not arrived there at that time? When we go to Exodus 19, verse 1, we read, in the 3rd month, when the children of Israel were gone out of the land of Egypt, the same day, that is the same date of the month, the same day came they into the wilderness of Sinai. Here we see that the children of Israel arrived at Mount Sinai on the 15th day of the 3rd month, having left Egypt on the 15th day of the 1st month, the month of Abib. Now, how do we know that this is so? When we turn to the book of Numbers, chapter 33, verses 1 through 3, we read the following. These are the journeys of the children of Israel, which went forth out of the land of Egypt with their armies under the hand of Moses and Aaron. And Moses wrote their goings out according to their journeys by the commandment of Yahuwah. And these are their journeys according to their goings out. And they departed from Ramses in the 1st month on the 15th day of the 1st month, on the morrow after the Passover. The children of Israel went out with a high hand in the sight of all the Egyptians. Well, when was the Passover? The Passover was on the 14th day of the 1st month, which is called Abib. They left the next day, which would have been the 15th day of Abib. Now here we are told that Moses and the children of Israel arrived at Mount Sinai on the same day that they had left Egypt. They left on the 15th day, which means that they arrived the next month on that same day, which was the 15th. Now this means that since they arrived on the 15th day of the 3rd month, then it means that their arrival would have been 7 days after the count of the 7th complete Sabbath. Not the next day, which would have been the 9th, but it was 7 days after. So when we think of the 9th of the third week of the third month, the Hebrew Israelites had not even arrived at Mount Sinai at that time. This alone shows that it would be impossible for the 50th day to have taken place on that 9th of the third month. Recalling that the 9th of the third month is the 50th day after they left, but it was that is 7 weeks. 7 times 7 is 49, plus that one day, the day after the Sabbath, would have made it 50. But that is not the count, and that is not the completion of the instructions which Scriptures gives us. Moses did not arrive on Mount Sinai until the 15th day of the third month. Again, that would be 7 days after the complete count of the 7th month, the 7th Sabbath. So starting with Numbers, chapter 33, verse 3, we read, "And they departed from Ramses in the first month on the 15th day of the first month. On the morrow after the Passover, the children of Israel went out with a high hand in the sight of all the Egyptians." So when did they depart? On the 15th day of the first month. When we go to Exodus 19, we see, Exodus 19 verse 1, we see that in the third month, when the children of Israel were gone out of the land of Egypt, the same day, the 15th, came they into the wilderness of Sinai, the 15th of the third month. So it would have been totally impossible for the day after the 7th Sabbath, which is always the 8th day of the third month, to have been the day in which Moses came down from Mount Sinai with the Ten Commandments. Why? Because he had not even arrived yet. They didn't arrive until the 15th. So it'd be totally impossible for the Feast of Weeks, the Chag Shabuah, or what the Gentiles call Pentecost, to have arrived or to have occurred on the 19th, indicating what? Why? And why would this be the case? Because they have not followed through with all the instructions. Because with the instructions, you must add 50 days to that 9th day of the third month. And that's what takes you to the 28th or the 29th day of the fourth month, giving us the correct day on which Moses came down from Mount Sinai with the Ten Commandments. And it is that day what is commemorated by the Chag Shabuah, or in the more, I believe, more corrupted Hebrew, the Shavuot, and certainly corrupted in what the Gentiles call a Pentecost. And Pentecost is based upon 50 days after Easter. You see in here, which we have studied so far, no mention of Easter whatsoever. That's something that those heathens made up and placed it on Easter Sunday. So brothers and sisters, you got to be very careful. Especially, and I'm talking about a lot of these folks who may be seeing this, who are still in these churches. You got to be careful about what you're doing. You got to be very careful. You have been taught by these Gentiles. Remember, it was these Gentiles who brought us over here in slave chains. It is the Gentiles who taught us Santa Claus and Easter bunnies and Halloween and all that other garbage. When we came over here in those slave ships, we did not have that in our minds, unless it is that they had taught us to us in transition. because the records show that when many of our people left Portugal and Spain, those black Hebrews, those Negro elite who left Portugal and Spain by order of the Roman Catholics, Pope, remember, because they were going to take our children into slavery if we didn't convert to Roman Catholicism. And that's what they did. And then they took us to some island off the west coast of Africa called St. Thome, where they indoctrinated our children in this garbage that they call Christianity. And then brought us over here in those slave ships. I want somebody to show me where in the scriptures Jesus told these Christians under Christianity to enslave people. Somebody show that to me, please. So we have Moses and the children of Israel arriving on the 15th day of the 3rd month. This is 7 days after the 7th Sabbath count, which, as we should recall, that was on the 8th day of the 3rd month. But there's more. Moses instructed Israel to wash themselves and their clothes because Father Yah was going to visit them upon Mount Sinai in 3 days. So that's an additional 3 days. The 7 that we just talked about, plus these 3 days when they were told to wash their clothes because Father Yah was going to visit them. We see this in Exodus 19, verses 9 and 10. And Yahuwah said unto Moses, Lo, I come unto thee in a thick cloud, that the people may hear when I speak with thee, and believe thee forever. And Moses told the words of the people unto Yahuwah. And Yahuwah said unto Moses, Go unto the people, and sanctify them today and tomorrow, and let them wash their clothes, and be ready against the 3rd day. For the 3rd day Yahuwah will come down in the sight of all the people upon Mount Sinai. And then there was the amount of time that Moses actually spent on Mount Sinai. The people were terrified of the presence of Yahuwah and asked that he, Moses, go up into Mount Sinai and speak with Father Yah, which he did. He was gone a total of 40 days. We see this in Exodus 24, 15 through 18. And Moses went up into the mount, and a cloud covered the mount, and the glory of Yahuwah abode upon Mount Sinai, and the cloud covered it 6 days. And the 7th day he called unto Moses out of the midst of the cloud, and the sight of the glory of Yahuwah was like devouring fire on the top of the mount in the eyes of the children of Israel. And Moses went into the midst of the cloud, and gat him up into the mount. And Moses was in the mount 40 days and 40 nights. Therefore, there was another 40 days that must be added to the 3rd month, 8th day, which marks the 7th Sabbath date, for a total of 50 days. 7 plus 3 plus 40. 50 days. This brings us to the 4th month on either the 28th or the 29th as the Feast of Weeks. Moses came down with the 10 Commandments on the 28th or the 29th of the 4th month, exactly 50 days after the 7th complete Sabbath, which was the 8th day of the 3rd month. Add to that the 7 days that Moses arrived after that date. Add to that the 3 days in which the children of Israel were told to cleanse themselves and their clothes because Father Yah was going to visit them. and then the 40 days that Moses was actually up in Mount Sinai. Next, we have the Feast of Trumpets and the Day of Atonement. When we look at Leviticus 23 through 28, we read the following. And Yahuwah spoke unto Moses, saying, Speak unto the children of Israel, saying, In the 7th month, in the 1st day of the month, shall you have a Sabbath, a memorial of blowing of trumpets, a holy convocation. Ye shall do no servile work therein, but ye shall offer an offering made by fire unto Yahuwah. And Yahuwah spake unto Moses, saying, Also on the 10th day of this 7th month there shall be a day of atonement. It shall be a holy convocation unto you, and you shall afflict your souls, and offer an offering made by fire unto Yahuwah. And ye shall do no work in that same day, for it is a day of atonement, to make an atonement for you before Yahuwah, your Elohim. Now let's take a closer look at Leviticus 23 and 24 with relationship to our calendar. Notice that it says that in the 7th month, in the 1st day of the month, ye shall have a Sabbath, a memorial of blowing of trumpets, a holy convocation. Now notice that this 1st day of the month is New Moon Day. This is the first time where we've seen that a feast day is falling on New Moon Day. Also realize throughout this discussion that if New Moon Day had not been in the position that is in, none of this would fit properly. All the dates would be shifted over by one. Now let's take a look at Leviticus 23, 27 through 28. Also on the 10th day of this 7th month, there shall be a day of atonement. It shall be a holy convocation unto you, and ye shall afflict your souls, and offer an offering made by fire unto Yahuwah, and ye shall do no work in that same day, for it is a day of atonement, to make an atonement for you before Yahuwah, your Elohim. Now, what's important to notice here is that it says that it is a day, not 2 days, a day. Now, where it mentions the 9th day, that's the day where you're supposed to be afflicting your soul. That is, you're supposed to be looking at yourself very honestly and bringing forth all of those things that you know that you have done wrong, areas in which you are weak in. That is afflicting your soul. That's what is done on the 9th day. But on the Day of Atonement, that is carried out on the 10th day of the month. 1 day, not 2 days. And lastly, we come to the Feast of Tabernacles. In Leviticus 23, verses 33 through 36, we read the following. And Yahuwah spoke unto Moses, saying, Speak unto the children of Israel, saying, The 15th day of this 7th month shall be the Feast of Tabernacles for 7 days unto Yahuwah. On the 1st day shall be a holy convocation. You shall do no servile work therein. 7 days ye shall offer an offering made by fire unto Yahuwah. On the 8th day shall be a holy convocation unto you, and ye shall offer an offering made by fire unto Yahuwah. It is a solemn assembly, and ye shall do no servile work therein. Verse 42 through 44 says, Ye shall dwell in booths 7 days all that are Israelites born shall dwell in booths, that your generations may know that I made the children of Israel to dwell in booths when I brought them out of the land of Egypt. I am Yahuwah, your Elohim. And Moses declared unto the children of Israel the feast of Yahuwah. So here we have the Feast of Tabernacles. A tabernacle is a dwelling place, a house, a small dwelling such as a tent, or as in this case referred to as a booth. So here we have the 7 feasts declared by Father Yah himself. Now I want to take a look now at these dates according to this lunar-solar calendar, and I want to make comparisons with the Pagan Gentile Roman Catholic Gregorian calendar. Here I tried to synchronize the two calendars. The biblical lunar solar calendar with its feast days on the left-hand side with the Roman Catholic Gregorian pagan calendar on the right-hand side. Listing in the center, you see the list of the holidays and days of observances for the year 2020. And let me just say from the outset, this is a complete nightmare. A complete nightmare. You cannot synchronize these two calendar systems. It can't be done. It just cannot be done. Now, let me just say and show what I have on here so far. Now, let's take a look at that solid, heavier green arrow pointing from the first month of the biblical calendar on the 29th day. Now, that's the day of this recording. So on the 29th day of the first month was the day of this recording, and when we look on the Roman Catholic Gregorian calendar, it says it is April 21st. So we have this arrow line going from the 29th of the first month to the 21st day of April on the Roman Catholic pagan calendar. I'm just going to call it the pagan calendar from here on. All right, so this is an attempt to try to synchronize the two. When I was recording this, the pagan calendar indicated that it was the 21st of April. All right, now the next thing I did was to try to synchronize the first day of the first month, which is New Moon Day, and it turned out that synchronized with the 24th day of March, but it didn't synchronize from biblical calendar to pagan calendar. I had to use the 29th of the first day of the first month and then back up, 28 days, right? So if I'm recording on the 29th day of the biblical calendar and I want to get back to the first day of the biblical calendar, I would have to back up 28 days. So that's what I did on the pagan calendar. I backed up 28 days. And when you back up 28 days from April 21st, going back 28 days, it takes you to the 24th of March. But at least now they're somewhat in sync, because at least March is in the spring. The first month of Abib is always in the spring. So now at least they're in the spring, but that's still using the information from the biblical calendar side. Now, when you try to synchronize the biblical calendar directly with the pagan calendar, it ain't nothing but a nightmare. It is nothing but a nightmare. I'm going to give one example, and I will leave it to the rest of y'all to play with this thing, and you'll see how absolutely impossible how it is to synchronize these two calendars. All right, let's start with, again, the 29th of April. I'm sorry, the 29th of the first month of Abib, the date of this recording. Now, if I want to back up to the Passover, which we know the Passover was on the 14th day of the first month of Abib, then I would have to back up how many days? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 days. I would have to back up 15 days to arrive at the 14th of Abib, which biblically is the Passover. Now let's try to do that same thing over here on the pagan calendar, starting with the 21st. When you try to back up on the pagan calendar 15 days, let me just do it again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, I arrive at April 6th of the year 2020. So doing the exact same thing on the pagan calendar would take me to April 6th. But look at the center column for the holidays and observances. When did this say Passover was? It says Passover is on the 9th, right? Passover is on the 9th. Follow the little red arrow to the 9th day of April. So you see, they're out of sync. And there is absolutely no way that they can be in sync. The instructions that we are given in the scriptures cannot be synchronized in any way with this pagan calendar. Now, you can take a look at it and play around with it, and I hope that you do. And I hope that somebody would comment if they think that they're able to do this using, let's say, Pentecost. We saw that Pentecost falls on the 28th and the 29th of the fourth month of the biblical calendar. But sorry about that, that's my phone going off. My son's texting me. But we see that Pentecost is over here on the 31st day of May. All right? So try to synchronize that using scriptures. Absolutely impossible. It cannot be done. This is a nightmare. And I'm going to leave it at that. It can't be done. And try it with the Sabbath. It can't be done. When you try to go to a Sabbath, you know that, for example, you know that the day after Passover, which was on the 14th, the day after that was the 15th. And we saw from following scriptures in this lesson that the 15th was the Sabbath. Well, what did we find in the pagan calendar? That the Passover fell on the 6th of April, which is Monday. Well, the day after that certainly isn't a Sabbath day. That's the 7th of Tuesday. And I haven't heard anybody, any heathen, say that Tuesday was a Sabbath day. So it just shows you how out of sync this thing is, and you cannot determine the biblical feast days using this Roman Catholic pagan Gregorian calendar that these Gentiles have forced down our throats. It can't be done. Praise Father Yah, praise Father Yah. It is a pleasure to get back to the biblical calendar after dealing with that nightmare trying to synchronize the pagan calendar with the biblical calendar. Oh, praise Yah. So here we have it, folks. we have the 7 biblical feast days following exactly the instructions on how to determine them in scriptures. And we find that this lunar-solar calendar, we call it the lunar-solar calendar, each month being initiated by New Moon Day. And I hope you appreciate that if New Moon Day was not there, none of this would work. And this shows that New Moon Day, which was mentioned, some 20-something odd times in scriptures, and that's just in the KJV. It plays an important role in synchronizing these months. Remember, we saw in another lesson is that Father Yah, through the phases of the moon and the new moon, indicates to us when a month begins. Whereas in the pagan world, the Pope of Rome or the Emperor or Caesar Augustus or somebody like that determined when a new month began and how many days were in that month. See, this is all part of the attempt to steal Father Yah's worship and his glory, as Satan said that he would. So, thank Yah for this biblical calendar. Let's get ready to wrap things up. Okay, my brothers and sisters, here we are at the end of another lesson. Boy, this has been something, especially trying to synchronize that pagan calendar. But we have proven that the so-called lunar-solar calendar follows exactly the instructions of scriptures. And we can find each and every biblical feast day and the Sabbath on the lunar-solar calendar, which is actually designed by Father Yah himself. And in conclusion, we're going to show these other calendars that were not designed by Father Yah. They were designed by the children of Satan. This Roman Julian calendar with an 8-day week. Imagine trying to synchronize Father Yah's calendar with an 8-day week. Totally impossible. And from that was derived this Roman Julian 7-day week. I guess they decided that we can cause more damage by having the same number of days in their pagan calendar as the Hebrew Israelites had in their calendar. And they came up with this planetary calendar, which we've talked about before, with the names of those pagans, the images of those pagans at the top, and these figures of the horoscope in the middle. And from that was derived the calendar that we use today, this Roman Catholic Gregorian calendar. And recall from our previous lesson, we learned that when the Roman Catholic Gregorian calendar was instituted in October 15th, 1582, that the day before that was October 4th, 1582. They just dropped 10 days off the calendar. These heathens just dropped 10 days. You know, just changing the laws and changing the times, just like Scripture said. This is the fulfillment of Scriptures. So we're going to bring this to an end. And I hope that you've learned something. I've always learned when, when we're trying to teach. Teachers always learn from their teachings. Or they should anyway. Or they need to give up being teachers. But I humbly say I thank Father Yah for all this opportunity to share what he has shown me up to this point according to the light that he has given to me at this point. And all the brothers and sisters who also have videos out there that I have also learned from. You know, like Brother Yahuda, for example. Or, a number of others. There's quite a few others that when I hear and see the truth of them, We recognize that truth. And as we recall, the scripture says we must worship Father Yah in truth and in spirit. So we don't let any heathen force their lies upon us. So y'all be well, brothers and sisters, and stay safe from this coronavirus garbage that's going along. Be safe. Don't take any chances, because you don't know what these heathens are trying to do as they still and continuously try to eliminate we, the chosen people of Father Yah, and to institute their new world order. Y'all be safe out there. Shalom, shalom.